Well, it's good to be back with you guys this Sunday. Before service started, Roy assured me that the guy who filled in for me last week was every bit as funny and tall as I am, which I really appreciated. Thank you, Roy. Checks in the mail, my friend. That's very kind of you. Yeah, Amy and I we just got back last night from a long road trip. We ended up driving about 3,200 miles altogether. Many hours in the vehicle. We saw 5 different national parks, a couple national monuments, hiked 25 trails for our 25th anniversary, more than 50 miles on the trails, and it was a blast. We had so much fun. And all that to say that even after as much fun as we had, I was actually looking forward to getting back here. And you got to understand, I haven't always felt that way after vacations. You know how that is. Sometimes you get done with a vacation and you're like, oh my goodness, I have to go back. I never felt that way. So it's good to be back with you guys, genuinely good to be back with you guys. If you weren't here last week, I preached via video. That's what the joke's about. I was my own substitute last week. So we started looking at the book of Proverbs, and we went through Proverbs chapter 1, and today we're going to go through chapter 2. Now, we're not going to go through all 31 chapters of Proverbs this summer. Maybe another time, but not this time. Before we get into chapter 2, I have a question for those of you who are, let's say, at least a decade removed from your teenage years. Okay, some of you are trying to do the math. It doesn't have to be precise. You've been out of school for a while, let's just say that. So here's the question I have for you. If you could give your teenage self one piece of advice, what would it be? If you could sit down across the table in a cafe or something like that with your teenage self and say, you know, the one piece of advice I have for you is this, what would you tell yourself? I want you to think about that for a minute, and I'm actually going to ask you, some of you who are brave enough and willing to speak up and say, this is what I would tell myself. Now, for those of you who are still living in the teenage and young adult years, I want you to pay attention to what these old people have to say, okay? So, succinctly, if you could give your teenage self one piece of advice, what would you tell yourself? Enjoy life. I like that. Thank you, Jim. What else? Injuries will catch up to you. Who said that, Jen? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. That's great advice. I was indestructible. I don't know what you're talking about. What else, you guys? This is good. What else? Choose your friends wisely. That is brilliant advice. Would anybody have benefited from that in your teenage years, from that piece of advice? Yeah, okay. If you don't have your hand raised, you're not telling the truth, probably. What else? Give me a couple more of you. What would you tell your teenage self? Yeah, Edith, go ahead.
Take all advices, but make up your own mind and don't listen necessarily what other people say.
Yeah.
Trust your own opinion.
That's good. So take advice, but make up your own mind. That's great advice. I tried to tell my kids that as they were growing up. Make up your own mind. Decide for yourself what you think about these things. Yeah. Let's do one more. I could honestly just sit here and listen to this all day. I'd have to call on you, obviously, but I could do this all day. So one more of you.
What I think about is what I could have been. What kind of a husband could have I been? What kind of a father
Sure.
could have I been?
Mm-hmm.
Should have I been? So that's the regret that I have.
Sure. So when you look back early on in your life, the decisions you make then have a tremendous impact on the person you become in the years to follow. Yeah. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Now, hopefully, even if you didn't answer just now, you have something in your head, at least some advice that you would give yourself, your teenage self. Several years ago, quite a few years ago now, probably 10 years ago, I asked this same question in our Glendive church, and a lot of people responded with some very similar type of advice as you guys just gave, but the one piece of advice that really stuck with me was from my friend Don Brown, who I suppose is in his early 60s at that time, late 50s, something like that. And when I said, Don, what would you tell yourself? And he just simply said, I would say, stop. I would say, stop. Think back to your teenage years. How often would that simple piece of advice have saved you an incredible amount of grief? The best advice is often simple, isn't it? And that's what we're learning and will learn in Proverbs, okay? Last week we began the series by looking at chapter 1 and how wisdom offers us life. Here in chapter 1, wisdom was personified as a woman calling out, right? Remember this in the middle of the city square, from the walls, from the towers, she's calling out saying, hey, I'm offering you life. She's trying to get our attention with an offer of life, but also rebuking us for our foolishness. Hey, don't be stupid. Do the right thing. If we listen to wisdom, we'll receive security and peace and blessing. But if we don't listen, then disaster awaits us. That's essentially what chapter 1 of Proverbs was about. So Proverbs, the major theme in the book of Proverbs is the difference between wisdom and foolishness, or wisdom and folly. That's the major theme throughout. Wisdom leads to prosperity and blessing. Foolishness leads to suffering and shame. We also need to know that Proverbs is deeply spiritual, but highly practical. Those things are not exclusive of each other. Proverbs is rooted in faith and knowledge of God, but it is highly applicable to everyday life. Simple advice for what are sometimes complex situations in our lives. Now, Proverbs was written and compiled, by Solomon, okay, by King Solomon. He wrote and compiled all of the Proverbs. His wisdom exceeded all others. But the problem was that he didn't apply it to his own life. So Solomon was both wise and discerning, but also foolish and misled. So his own life became a proverb for us to warn us about the dangers of not listening to wisdom. Wisdom is the major focus of the book of Proverbs. It's rooted in a right relationship with God. That's the foundation of wisdom. Relationship with God is something that we build upon. It's not an add-on to our lives. And again, wisdom is highly practical, useful, and really simple. So wisdom is about a right relationship with God, but it's about rightly applying what we know, okay? So Proverbs chapter 2, where we're going to be today, is about the benefits of making wisdom your companion as you travel life's journey. And I just kind of want you to picture that in your head today, that as you are walking through life, along life's journey, wherever that has taken you, whatever that looks like for you, that wisdom actually wants to be your companion as you go along through life. Chapter 2 explores the impact of embracing wisdom and the tragedy of rejecting wisdom. And the big idea, at least for today, for us, is this, that if you walk with wisdom, you will walk with integrity. If you walk with wisdom, you'll walk with integrity. When I taught at the college for many, many years, I taught a course called Introduction to Ethics, and one of the things that we would talk about in my ethics class was this concept of integrity. And one of the things that I used to suggest to my students in that class was that your integrity might be the only thing in your life that you have complete control over, right? We can't control what happens to us, but we can always choose how we respond to those things that happen to us. I explained that integrity is a word, we usually associate it with people, but integrity is a word that we can use to describe objects, right? If an object has integrity, it stands up under pressure. It doesn't fall apart. It's solid and reliable. These oak pews that you're all sitting in right now, they have integrity, right? They're solidly built. They stand up under pressure. They don't fall apart. They are solid and reliable. And the same is true of people who have integrity. They stand up under pressure. They don't fall apart, and they are solid and reliable. So if we want to live our lives as people of integrity, we need to learn to walk with wisdom, hand in hand as companions. Now, the theme of Proverbs 2 is how wisdom guards our path or guards our life, like a private security detail walking with us as we go on through life. Wisdom is a great companion to have with us as we travel life's journey. So as we start reading Proverbs 2, we're going to read through the whole thing today. I want you to take note of the if-then statement in verses 1 through 5. If-then. Just like we saw last week in chapter 1, wisdom offers us life and will guard our life, but only if we will apply it and actually use it. It is not enough to just know about wisdom and not apply it. Wisdom only works if you use it, right? All right, so here it is, Proverbs chapter 2. Let's read the first 5 verses here. This is from New International Version, is what I'm reading from today. Solomon writes this. He says, "My son," it includes daughters as well, "people, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding." So get that. Wisdom and understanding, they're not just a head thing. They're a heart thing as well. "Indeed, if you call out for insight and call aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as for silver and search for it as hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God." Now, what did we learn about the fear of the Lord from Proverbs chapter 1? Does anybody remember? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and knowledge, right? It's the foundation. You know, come on, be confident. You know this. You know the word. If we look for the word, if we look for wisdom, like we would like a person searches for treasure, if we will do that, then we will understand what it means to fear God, and we'll know God more deeply. So in these first 5 verses, I don't know if you picked up on them, there were 8, I guess we could call them imperative statements, do this statements that are worth noting. Accept, store up, turn, apply, call, cry aloud, look, and search. Do you get the idea that our pursuit of wisdom has to be intentional? That this isn't something we accidentally stumble into, okay? So, in order to receive the promised blessing, in verse 5, the understanding, the fear of the Lord, and finding the knowledge of God, in order to receive that, we must put in the work that wisdom requires of us. A life of integrity must be lived intentionally. You don't stumble accidentally into it and go, "Oh, I don't know how it happened, but all of a sudden I'm wise and full of integrity." That doesn't happen. So walking with wisdom and walking with integrity begins by walking with God, right? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, the beginning of knowledge. Wisdom guards us by keeping us on the path that God intends for us. Solomon tells us to seek wisdom as if we were searching for treasure. I don't know if any of you are treasure hunters. You don't strike me as a treasure hunting type, but maybe you are. But you've probably heard stories of people searching for treasure or whatever. But when people are searching for treasure, they do so with urgency, with excitement, with a willingness to sacrifice, and with an anticipation of reward. That there will be something at the end of what I am devoting my time and energy to, that this is going to be worth it in the end. We are supposed to pursue wisdom the same way. See, if we will surrender our will, we will find understanding. That is, if we give up control of our lives, we'll find deeper understanding. Why? Because God will open our hearts and our minds to that deeper understanding. If we sacrifice our comfort, we will find the treasure. If we give up our addiction to ease, will find an incomparable prize. Jesus tells a story about this, or a parable about this, and says that the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure in a field, and it's so valuable that a guy goes and sells everything he has just so he can buy the field and make sure he gets that treasure. Wisdom is like that treasure, Solomon tells us. He tells us that if we will seek wisdom, we will find God. Okay? If we will pay the price for wisdom, we will find that we can know God deeply. So make no mistake, there is a price to pay to get wisdom. We have to give up our own way that seems right to us. We're going to read about that in chapter 3, okay? But we have to give up our own way of thinking and our own way of seeing the world in order to make room for wisdom in our lives. But there is also a greater price to pay if we don't get wisdom. So there's a price to pay to get it, but a bigger price to pay if we don't get it. We may get what we want only to find out that it's not what we really want. So, here's a question for you to ask yourself, the first of, I think, 4 questions today, and it's this. Am I willing to give up what's good to get something that's even better? That's hard, isn't it? Give up the good things to pursue what's better or what's best. Now, some of you who are more risk-averse would say, well, why would I give up something good? It's good. But when you look at Jesus' parables about the kingdom of heaven and what he is asking us to give up to receive him and to receive the kingdom, he's not asking us to give up things that are easy to give up. Like, oh, Lord, I'd be willing to give up taxes to go to heaven. Ooh, that's really deeply spiritual, right? I'd be willing to give up whatever else that's easy to give up. No, he asks us to give up good things in order to receive something that's even better. So I have to ask you, are you willing to give up something good to get something that's even better? Am I willing to pursue wisdom as if it's a great treasure that when I find it, it'll change my life? If I get wisdom and I walk with wisdom, I will learn to walk with God and with integrity. All right, so that's the first 5 verses of Proverbs chapter 2. So how does wisdom actually keep us on the path that God intends for us? Because Solomon tells us it will. Wisdom will keep us on the path. How does wisdom help us to walk with integrity? Well, simply put, it's because God is the source and the giver of wisdom. Wisdom doesn't exist out here kind of doing its own thing. God is the source of wisdom. So when we seek wisdom, we find its source, God himself, and that he is what keeps us on the path. So here's verses 6 through 11 of Proverbs 2. For, remember the if-then, if you pursue wisdom like it's the most valuable thing on earth, then you'll find God. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He holds success in store for the upright. He is a shield to those whose walk is blameless. See, he guards your life. Wisdom guards your life. For he guards the course of the just and protects the way of his faithful ones. Then you will understand what is right and just and fair. Every good path, for wisdom will enter your heart. Again, not just your mind. And knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion or discernment will protect you, and understanding will guard you. So the if-then continues here in these verses with the specific benefits or blessings of understanding and knowledge mentioned in verse 5. If we will do our part, which is to seek wisdom and fear the Lord, then God will do his part, which is protecting us and guarding us. Now, I don't want you to hear me say that and think, oh, so I have to earn it, right? I got to earn these things. No, we don't earn these things by our good behavior or our hard work, but it is our obedience to God that opens the door to receiving his gift in the first place. We shouldn't expect the blessings of God if we're going to be disobedient. So in these 6 verses here, Solomon tells us how to walk with success. Did you see that word in there? Success in verse 7. He holds success in store for the upright. Well, our world defines success in many different ways, right? And for many people, success it's a moving target, because like as soon as you hit it, you go, well, that was great, but there's got to be more, and it keeps moving on. But the word success in verse 7 here in your Bible basically means soundness and effectiveness. Okay? If you want to walk with success, you will be walking with soundness and effectiveness. If something is sound, it doesn't have any, it holds water. Maybe we can say it that way, right? If a boat is sound, it doesn't leak. If you want to walk with success, you're saying that you want to walk with soundness. You want there to be no gaps in your life, okay? It means to walk not just with soundness, but with effectiveness, that your life will make a difference, that it will be full of purpose and meaning. These are words that describe integrity, right? Soundness and effectiveness. See, success follows the upright. Did you notice that? That if we will prioritize godly living, uprightness, then we will find true success. It's not the other way around. Okay? You can't say, God, if you give me success, then I'll live an upright life. Solomon tells us, live an upright life and you'll find success. We read in this passage that protection follows the faithful. That if we will remain faithful to the Lord, then He will guard and protect our lives. We can't turn our back on God, walk the other direction from Him, and then expect not to fall into dangers and troubles. Discernment is what follows the wise. If we will utilize wisdom, put it into practice, then our hearts and our souls will operate with discretion, with discernment, with wisdom rightly applied in difficult situations. So wisdom guards our life and guards our course by attuning our hearts or aligning our hearts and souls to God and His ways. That's how it guards us, and that's how it guarantees us success. If we will be wise, we will walk in God's ways, and that's a recipe for success. Tuning our hearts to God's keeps our lives in between the guardrails, really, right? Ensuring that we don't go off the path that God has prepared for us. Now, verses 9 through 11 tell us that the evidence of wisdom is found in the heart. The evidence of wisdom is found in the heart. So here's my second question for you, is does my life demonstrate that my heart is wise? Verse 10 of Proverbs 2 says, wisdom will enter your heart and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will protect you and understanding will guard you. When wisdom takes root in your heart, there will be evidence in the way you live. So my question for you is, does my life demonstrate that my heart is wise? Am I walking blamelessly and faithfully? That's what verses 7 and 8 say a wise person's life looks like. Now, I got to talk about this word blamelessly just a little bit. This is verse 7. He holds success in store for the upright. He is a shield to those whose walk is blameless. That does not mean perfect. It means you live in such a way that no charge can be brought against you by those who watch your life, right? You're living an upright life of integrity. Does your life demonstrate that you have wisdom in your heart? Are you doing what is right and just and fair, as verse 9 says? See, if you walk with wisdom, you'll walk with God, you'll walk with integrity, and you'll walk with success. If you don't, you won't. So wisdom keeps our lives between the guardrails and on the right path. But most of us, well, maybe I'm exaggerating, many of us at least, think that we don't need God's help navigating the course. We think that we can do it on our own, that we're ready for whatever comes our way, right? Just bring it on, life. But no matter how prepared we think we are for life's unexpected twists and turns, we all need God-given wisdom for all of life. So, as is often the case in Proverbs, Solomon gives some profound kind of one-liner statements, and then he will say, here's an example of what I'm talking about. Here's how wisdom will guard your life. And that's what we read here now in verses 12 through 19. Two practical applications that remind us of our need for God's wisdom. Solomon basically saying, here, let me show you what I'm talking about. Remember, Proverbs is very spiritual and very practical. So verses 12 through 19, he's basically saying here, for example, okay? He says, for example, Wisdom will save you from the ways of wicked men, from men whose words are perverse, who have left the straight paths to walk in dark ways, who delight in doing wrong and rejoice in the perverseness of evil, whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. Do you get the picture of the kind of person he's talking about here? This is not a good dude. Who was it who said, choose your friends wisely? Was that you, Anita? Yeah. That's kind of what Solomon's saying here. For example, wisdom will help you not choose losers as companions. Okay? Now, note also, starting in verse 16, he says, wisdom will save you also from the adulterous woman or man, from the wayward woman or man with his or her seductive words, you get the picture, who has left the partner of her youth and ignored the covenant she made before God. Surely her house leads down to death and her paths to the spirits of the dead. None who go to her return or attain the paths of life. So Solomon says, hey, if you pursue wisdom like it's a valuable treasure worth more than anything else in life, you will find God, and God will keep you on a straight path. You will walk an upright and blameless life. You will live with wisdom, and you will be successful. And oh, by the way, when these sorts of situations come up, you will know what to do. You will recognize them for what they are. Now, of course, I know that none of us here would ever be susceptible to the temptations mentioned here. That's sarcasm. But hey, maybe somebody you know could use this advice. It's you. You need it, okay? If we will apply wisdom to our daily lives, it can save us from a life of wickedness, perversion, crookedness, darkness, wrongdoing, evil, and deviousness. That's a pretty good deal. In other words, wisdom helps you live a life of integrity. So we have seen so far that wisdom teaches us to walk with God and to walk with success as a result of walking with God. And in verses 12 through 19, we see that wisdom also teaches us that sometimes we should just walk away. Walk away. I think of my friend Dawn saying, my advice to my younger self would be, stop. Stop. A fool thinks that every battle is worth fighting, but a wise person knows that the right response to temptation is usually just to walk away. See, wisdom saves us from sin, and here's how. Wisdom serves as both a safeguard against it and a strategy when we're tempted by it. And the strategy is this: beat it. Leave. Get out of there, right? Wisdom also teaches us restraint. It helps us know when to, Kenny Rogers said, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run. Wisdom teaches us restraint and helps us know what to do. Wisdom helps us to avoid the slippery slopes. You've heard that phrase before, I assume, right? Where like you're just right on the edge and all it takes is one misstep and whew, there you are. You're gone. And that's what Solomon's talking about here, ironically, I understand, in chapter 2 about watching out for adulterous women. The guy had 300 wives and 700 girlfriends on top of that, okay? And again, this is a guy who did not apply what he knew to be best. Wisdom helps us avoid those slippery slopes. Wisdom points out the hazards of giving in just a little bit, alerting us to the slippery slopes that are hidden, usually along the dark, crooked paths. We usually can't see them. Now, last week, just a few days ago, when Amy and I were on one of our hikes, I wandered off the path a little bit, which I tend to do. It was on purpose. Wandered off the path a little bit just to see what was just right over here and just maybe a different view over there. And I came across a sign that said something like this. It said, "Not a trail, danger ahead." Well, I can't just look at that and not know what the danger ahead is. How many of you would have also just kind of stepped out a little further to see what the danger ahead was? Well, the danger ahead was about 20 feet from where the sign was posted, and it was the edge of a cliff with a steep drop to death. Like, there was no 10 feet down there's a ledge and it'll catch me. It was like Remember like when Wile E. Coyote runs out and then he just, like, that would have been me. Wisdom said, stop. I want you to think about some of the times in your life to this point when wisdom has tried to tell you to stop, walk away, but you went ahead anyway. How'd it turn out for you when you ignored wisdom? Good times, I bet, right? Isn't it tons of fun to try to bounce back from stupid decisions or indecisions? No, of course not. So I want you to ask yourself here another question as we're learning how wisdom teaches us to walk away. Is in what area or areas of my life is wisdom saying stop? And I don't mean back then when you were young and dumb. I mean right now when you're older and still dumb. Maybe less. Thank you, Anita. I appreciate you understand what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to be condescending to you guys. I'm not trying to put you down, but I mean, there's a reason that wisdom should follow us all of our days, right? We don't just get to a point and go, oh, well, now that I'm an adult, I've got it all figured out. How dumb I was when I was young. What areas right now in your life, right now, is wisdom saying stop right now? And you're like, I don't know if I should listen to wisdom or not. I know the sign says not a trail, danger ahead, but what if I just kind of see what's over the edge there? One false step and you're done. And wisdom is trying to say, don't do that. Don't go there. Avoid it. Walk away. What's an area of your life where wisdom is just saying, you just got to stop? That's God speaking to you with wisdom. If you walk with wisdom, you'll walk with God. You'll walk with integrity. You'll walk with success, and sometimes it's because you'll just walk away. So, to recap, if you seek wisdom from God and apply it to your life, then you will gain understanding, discretion, and maturity. If, then. And now, in the last 3 verses of chapter 2, thus. If, then, thus, which means as a consequence or as a result. What happens as a result of wisdom's influence in your life? If you will apply wisdom, then you will walk with God and walk with integrity, and therefore, or as a consequence, what happens? Here's what happens. Thus, you will walk in the ways of the good and keep to the paths of the righteous. For the upright will live in the land, I'll talk about that in a little bit, and the blameless will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the unfaithful will be torn from it. So wisdom teaches us to walk with God and to walk with success and shows us when to walk away. But wisdom isn't just prohibitive. Wisdom doesn't just say, stop, don't. It doesn't just do that. It gives us a model of integrity. It gives us a positive example, and it says, walk this way. Okay? So wisdom gives us an example of how to live as well. If you walk with wisdom, you'll be on and stay on the right path. You will learn to walk in the ways. In whose ways? The ways of the good. That's what Solomon says in verse 20. Choose your path. You can choose the wicked man, the wayward woman, or the blameless person. Whose ways are you going to walk in? Wisdom teaches us to stay on the path. What path is that? The paths of the righteous, verse 20 tells us. Well, this sounds pretty good so far. Walking in the ways of the good and on the paths of the righteous. By staying in the will of God and in the company of good people, you can stay on the path. But what is this reference to living in the land? Okay, we need a little bit of a history lesson here as to what Solomon is talking about here. So the land that he's talking about here in verses 20 through 22, 21 and 22, the upright will live in the land, the wicked will be cut off from the land, and so on. This is a reference back to Deuteronomy chapter 28. Deuteronomy is basically, if I can summarize it, Deuteronomy is Moses' last, I don't want to say his last-ditch effort. That sounds so pessimistic, but it's not that wrong either. It's the last time that Moses gives the law of God to the people of Israel before they cross into the promised land. They know they're going to go. They know that God has brought them there. They know that they're going to go and manifest destiny or whatever. They're going to walk into the will of God, into the promised land, and Moses says, hey, before we go, you got to listen to this all again. Let me read it to you again from the very beginning. So that's why if you read through your Bible and you read through Deuteronomy, you're like, I swear I just read this. You did. You just read it in Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers. So they're right on the edge of the promised land. And in Deuteronomy chapter 28, God lays out for the Israelites through Moses blessings for obedience and curses for disobedience. And it's a whole chapter of if-thens. Chapter 32 of Deuteronomy is very similar. He basically, if I can summarize it, says, if you will obey God and follow his laws and decrees, then you will be so blessed in the land that I am giving to you. But if you don't do what God says and you don't follow his laws and his ways, then you will be cursed. You'll face famine, you'll face drought, you'll face enemies from every side. And what remains in the rest of the Old Testament is basically the repercussions for not doing what God said. I mean, that's what happens. So when Solomon is referring here to living in the land, he is using that as a way to describe the blessings of God. If you walk in the way, in the manner, in the example that wisdom sets for you through God and his word, you will live in a place of blessing. That sounds a whole lot better than what most of us are settling for. Again, maybe your life isn't bad. Maybe it's good, but there's a better way. And wisdom says this is the better way. All right, that makes sense? Blessings for following obediently, listening to wisdom. Okay, so one last question for today, and I think it's really what Proverbs chapter 2 is really all about, is will I choose to walk with the righteous or the wicked? And the key word in that question is choose, right? You always have a choice as to how you're going to respond. We live in a time in our culture, in our society, in our world where people are used to blaming others or blaming circumstances for how they turn out and for the decisions that they make. And I understand the impact that those things have on us in our lives. But we always have a choice. So what Proverbs is asking us and what Solomon is asking us and what God is asking us is, hey, you have a choice to walk either with the righteous or with the wicked. So who's it going to be? Who are you going to walk with? Looking at the results of both of those types of lives, which one are you going to choose? I have a choice. When it comes to my path and my direction in life, I'm not helpless. I'm not a victim. I can choose whether to walk with the righteous and blameless or with the wicked and the unfaithful. So if I choose to walk with wisdom, I will walk with God. I'll walk with integrity. I'll walk with success. I'll walk away from danger. And thus, as a result, I'll walk with the righteous. If you walk with wisdom, you will walk with integrity. If you don't, you won't. As a person of integrity, you'll be able to stand up under pressure. You won't fall apart. You'll be solid, stable, reliable. You become a person of integrity by walking with wisdom and by walking with God, who guards your life and gives you success. If we want to live our lives as people of integrity, we must learn to walk with wisdom and let wisdom guard our lives. All right? Let's pray about this. Lord, thank you for inviting us to walk with you, for inviting us to know you, for inviting us to understand your ways. It's so kind of you, so generous. Lord, thank you for offering us wisdom as a companion on our life's journey. Lord, help us to pursue wisdom. like a valuable treasure. Help us to see that true, lasting, meaningful success comes by upright, faithful, and wise living. God, I pray that you would give us the discernment and the courage to walk away from situations that are dangerous to our lives and our souls, and teach us to walk in the way of wisdom and become people of integrity. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.